We thank Barnes & Noble, of course, my old home. I helped open the store 10 or 11 years ago, I guess. What a crazy thing that is to open a store. Many of you have done it, I know. And left town, you'll hear a little more about that after 41 years last summer, which is when I went and met Emily. We'll say more about that. So I'm Erin, and this is Emily. So thank you very much, Barnes & Noble, and for all of you for coming. So great to see you all. New people, older. I mean, old, I already know you. You know what I mean. Anyway, this is Emily, and I'm Erin, if you don't know us. So here's the funny thing. Emily and I haven't really known each other that long, not even 2 years, and here we are already having a book together. Any of you in the publishing industry, which are many, know that that is already almost miraculous. A good friend of ours, a mutual friend, introduced us thinking, well, neither of us can really remember what she was thinking, but she thought that we should get together and meet each other, and that probably it would be about books. That we would maybe, I don't know, maybe we'd collaborate, or that I would talk to Emily about writing in a small format, because that's mostly what I do. And Emily had been writing these big, beautiful, colorful cookbooks all this time. And I don't know what either of us had in mind either, but then we got together, and I was already working on this very, very long book proposal, and Emmy wanted to think about writing about food, but not a cookbook. So we decided we'd meet for breakfast.
And breakfast is when it all started. You know, we had a really great time talking about writing, about food writing, about non-food writing, and I think one of the reasons I wanted to write about in short format was I thought it would be easier. Because after writing a cookbook and testing recipes forever and ever, I said, I want to do something easier. And then I quickly realized that writing shorter was actually harder than that. But we were both in milestone years in our lives when we met. I had just turned 60 a couple weeks before, and Erin was about to turn 65. So as we talked about writing and this and that, we also just started talking about aging. And then one of the things that we noticed is that even though we were in milestones of our lives, we weren't really upset about it, but we were really focused on it, focused on the transition in our lives. And I had celebrated my 60th birthday. I usually don't celebrate birthdays. For me, since I go out a lot in my profession, my idea of a birthday is pasta with red sauce in front of the TV in my pajamas. That's an occasion. But I said, this time I'm going to have a real party. So I had a lunch in San Francisco, and I invited 65 of my friends to women in the food world, and we had this amazing, amazing lunch cooked by Jonathan Waxman, a male chef. I couldn't have a female chef cook it because then they couldn't party with us. And it was so great, and it was so much fun. It was like, oh my God, I should have done this when I was 30, 40, 50, or 60. And I didn't tell my husband really, but it was more fun than my wedding.
So if you haven't picked up on this, I should mention, Emily is a multiple James Beard Award winning pastry chef. So everybody came, and there were cakes. There were so many cakes. My idea of a good time was that I was going to have 65 people in the backyard with a 6-hour disco playlist, of which I was the only person who was remotely interested. But to each your own, right? So Emily and I were each doing our own thing and turning our milestone years. But suddenly we were getting together and doing sort of also this book brainstorming. And as any of you know who have written a book or read a book, it's a very solo and lonely sort of occupation. So this was eye-opening to me, besides which I'm an only child and single. So, that's not really fun. So we talked and we confabbed a lot about Emmy's various new book ideas, and she motivated me and helped me get over a really annoying mental roadblock I was having with this book proposal. This is a good time to mention as we get older. It's important to make new friends. It's important to have friends of all ages because you want to talk to the people who are like you and have had the experiences you've had, but you also want to talk to people who have new ideas that you don't, and that can help you with a computer, maybe now and again in the really, the stuff that's really tough. They'll come into that. And so to have met Emily, I realized, when she motivated me for this book proposal, it was eye-opening to me. You know, you meet somebody and you think, I want to meet somebody who's like me, who's a mirror of me, but that's not what's really healthy and what's really forward-looking. You want to meet somebody who's going to whatever age, whatever occupation, whoever they are. They're going to give you something new. They're going to offer you something new in life. I just wanted to throw that in. It's really important. We were just talking about it a little while ago. So here we were having so much fun, and we were, I think, so grateful for each other's kindnesses. And suddenly, I'd only known Nemi like now 3 weeks, and she said, I did a small favor for her, and she said, well, now your birthday's coming up and you're going to have a party. I would like to make you 6 cakes for your birthday. And I was apoplectic because I'm not a pie person. I love cake. I love cake. And I said, oh no, you can't possibly do that. I'm just going over to the local place and getting the sheet cake for $18. And she said, well, no judgment, but I'd be happy to do it. But my mother has taught
to that party.
my mother taught me you always wait. You ask, you know, you do 2 or 3 times. You wait. So she asked the second time, and I said, no, I couldn't possibly. But she's in San Francisco, I'm in Massachusetts, and I'm sitting by the computer. I thought, please ask me one more time. And she said, I'd be happy to. Yes. So suddenly, here I am in a small town. Emmy has a house, a summer house in the same town, and suddenly my 65th birthday party was the big ticket in town. And believe me, it was not about the guest of honor. This was like Truman Capote's, you know, black and white ball. Big ticket, everybody wanted to go. But it was all about the cake. So.
The other thing that Erin and I realized is that even though we came from different fields, we both were very passionate about our careers. And even though we were at a point where we had stepped back from the daily grind of Erin publishing books and copy editing and trying to help people figure out what they're going to say, and for me working in a restaurant for 14 hours a day, we were very passionate about what we were doing, and we wanted to stay involved. And so I think that was something that was really key for us, is like, hey, how do you take something that you've been involved with so intensely and just pivot and turn with it a little bit so you're still as engaged, but you get to change that a little bit, but you also, you know, have some freedom. So, you know, we didn't see as we were shifting that we were not saying, oh, you know, we're changing our lives so much and that we were going to go buy a Barca Lounger or go buy a, you know, velour speed suit to go sit in and hang out in front of the TV. But we were keeping our passion, but we were changing our intention of where that passion was going to go.
So the important part was that we realized neither of us felt old. That was very important. We didn't think that we looked like our grandmother and grandfathers did at that age, or even what our parents looked like or seemed like at that age. We had no plans to retire. Neither of us was afraid of talking about aging. And so suddenly Emmy started talking about writing about aging. And I've been a bookseller here for a long time, and I can't tell you the number of times people will come into the store and they come up to the info desk and they say, my friend Kiki's turning 50 or 60 or 75 or whatever, and she's got everything in the world, but I've got to go to a dinner party tonight and I can't just show up with a bottle of wine. Where is the section on funny agings about books? And I said, there's no section. There's no section for those books. There's hardly anything. There's very little.
And what books there were so aggravating. The jokes were so self-deprecating. They were so stupid. They were insulting, and I felt insulted. And it's not like you weren't even. I wasn't even paying attention to them until I all of a sudden creeped up into that, you know, age category. And they're always about sagging body parts and, you know, lost brain cells. And it was like it made me really mad.
We were stunned. It was really just sort of gross. And we were both angry about it. So both of us are the type we found as we met each other that we are very intent on new experiences. And we are the type of people that both wake up in the morning and say, well, what's next? And we make sure that we try to do something, each of us, fun, no matter how small, every day. If any of you follow Gretchen Rubin's and her newsletter, she did a Q&A with us that appeared today with a giant headline saying, with a picture of us saying, we like to wake up and both of us think of something small to do every day, coast to coast. We reported on whatever the small fun thing was.
And sometimes that thing isn't thought of until after you've made your coffee.
Right. Anyway, so in that way we were exactly alike. So we decided I was going to put down my book proposal and was going to stop thinking about the food writing book for a little while, and we would write about aging. And that's how the road to So Who's Counting, the little quote book about growing older, still kicking ass, began.
The book with the biggest title, the littlest book with the biggest title. But I think at this point we were on a mission, because we were saying, you know, there's so many good things about being our age. There's so many positive things. And so we said, let's create a book and put a book together that reflects that, you know, is positive, inspiring, motivating, funny, and just makes us look at our age in a totally different way, in a positive, half full, you know, kind of way, half full glass instead of half empty. So every week we would get together we wouldn't get together. Every week we would start researching all these quotes, and we'd go on the internet and we'd read magazines and everything, and we would just spend so much time just finding more and more and more quotes, and we came up with just so many that we enjoyed, and people that were dead, alive, just everything, all ages.
We, in case you were wondering, we had a week-to-week phone call that was always going to be like 41 minutes. And we would call from Sausalito, or I'd be in Massachusetts, and it would always turn into, I don't know, do you like this quote? Well, I feel like we used the word intense in a quote last week. Let's go back and look at that. Let's go back and look at who said that. Did you know that she used to be that? It went on forever, 2.5 hours every time. But it suddenly seemed like the language of aging was everywhere. Like that happens so many times when you get interested in something, and suddenly it seems like it's all anybody's talking about. So we were paying attention to it, and it just seemed to come up all the time. So we decided that between us, we were going to try to change our own language. So we tried to stop saying 2 words, senior, unless we were saying, I'll take the senior ticket at the movie, or retire. So we would try to gently correct other people who didn't always like it so much when they used them. And we never said stuff like, yeah, I'm getting old, or not at my age. And it was harder to keep those words and that kind of talk out of our lexicon than you might think. Try it.
You know, as you start listening to it, you realize how normal it is, how everybody uses it. And, you know, we just were at the point where we were saying, okay, enough is enough. And some people we talked to got it right away. You know, we would say, stop using those words. You're like, oh my gosh, I really should. And then they would stop using them. And some would get the concept and they said, oh, you're right. I really should stop using that word. That's ridiculous. And then they'd say, oh, but if you write your book and I buy it, you're going to have to read it to me because I probably won't be able to see the words myself unless you do it in large print.
So, you know, but society has gotten so attuned to the language of talking old. I had just moved back to Massachusetts from here, as I said, after 41 years in New York. And all the people I was seeing at home, not my family, but my friends, old and new, were saying, hey, I hear you're here and you moved and you're retired. And I made it the sort of like crusade of one to always say, no, I moved and I'm doing something else. And they always sort of roll their eyes. It's like somebody asking you how you are, to tell them. But it's true, I have a part-time job. I'm actually a book buyer, so there's one more job always for you in the industry you love. Don't think there isn't. And I run a big book club that has, you know, scores and scores of people in it. And I'm a writer, so with any luck, I'm going to do that till I drop dead at the typewriter someday. Probably, hopefully not soon. But we don't want to talk about retirement. We want to talk about reinvention.
You know, and I was a pastry chef for years and then an executive pastry chef, and that really, the difference there is just the number of people you manage and the number of restaurants that you work with. So after a while, I was like, this executive pastry chef title is just way too serious. There's too much responsibility on it. So I said, I'm going to change my title to CPO, which is Chief Pastry Officer. And living in San Francisco, there are all those tech companies and their chief people person, chief media person, none of it which makes any sense, but it all sounds good. So I am actually the only CPO, Chief Pastry Officer, on this planet. So I probably should have trademarked it. But it's a much more nebulous job. It's a fabulous job because there's people looking and they go, what is that? And then there's no expectation. So I can kind of do what I want. And what I'm doing actually at this point is I still have a job. I work with a restaurant group in San Francisco, and I design all their dessert menus. I'm not involved, as I said earlier, in the day-to-day stuff, but the creative part and doing marketing and things like that for the restaurants I still do. I'm on the board of the James Beard Foundation, which is a culinary organization made for chefs, and I still travel all over the country cooking with other chefs for fundraisers. And over the years I've done it, but now I'm getting more particular. If someone wants me to go to a city that I've been to that I don't think is that's exciting, I say, I'm sorry, that date I'm busy. But if they say, do you want to go to Bangkok? I'm like, oh sure, I'm available that day.
Anyway, so we're not, what we're saying is, it's not like we're not going to die. We're not being stupid about it. But we certainly, neither of us have any intention, we think you shouldn't either, of slowing down until we have to. It's very different, as we said, than it was for our parents and our grandparents. We travel more. We're all, generally in better shape. We live longer. People our age look for new experiences all the time, whether it's institutionally or on your own. We start second and third and fourth careers. We go on dating websites. And if it's one thing we're not going to settle for, we're never going to settle for it. No one in this room is going to settle for it's invisibility.
The 50 and older is the largest growing demographic. But if you look at the marketing, no one markets to anyone like that. And so it's really important. It's like, people know that we're still around. We organized the book into chapters, and as we kind of pulled and we have all these great quotes, we kind of started putting them in piles around a large dining room table. And we started organizing them in areas like attitude, silver linings, words of wisdom, looking both forward and backward, lessons learned, just things like that, where we just tried to make it so when you flip through the book, you could get a sense of kind of where the quote was coming from and what kind of, where the quote was coming from, and what you should think about it in relationship to your own life.
So there's people often ask us, what is the quote that, what quote do you love best? And we've got one that just always kills us.
Yeah, well, and the thing is too, is like, there are a couple quotes that are always our most favorite quotes, and then there's some that change depending on the day, the time, the weather, whatever. But the one quote that I just love and makes me smile every time is a Louis Buñuel quote, and it says, age is of no importance unless you're cheese.
So what's your favorite one today, Emmy, or right now?
Today, I think it's the Diane Ackerman quote, which is, I don't want to get to the end of my life and find that I lived just the length of it. I want to have lived the breadth of it as well. And for me, I think that when you get to older, people say, what's on your bucket list? And to me, a bucket list is a big thing. It's like skydiving, going to India or something like that. But also if you think about life and I think about what I want to do for the remainder of the many years I've left, there are a lot of small things that I want to do. And they're just little things that I want to run my life by, or I want to engage with other people. So it doesn't have to be something big. And this quote makes me stop and think, what do I want to do? How do I want to live my life in even the smallest ways? The other thing that we realize is that when you read a quote like that, you want to know more about Diane Ackerman. And so we would get down this rabbit hole, and we discovered that, not only is she an author, but she's a naturalist, she's a TV host, she's a Pulitzer Prize finalist, and she also has a molecule named after herself called Diane Ackerman, and it's a pheromone in crocodilia. So that's the other thing too, when you read these quotes of some kind of random obscure people, you start discovering that not only do they say an amazing quote, they have an amazing life,
right,
which can be very invigorating and really fun and be a really big time suck.
So I don't expect to have a molecule named after me. I was sort of hoping for a small street somewhere, but I get the point. It's easy to keep like we talked about the bucket list, it's easy to keep your eye on one big prize. And then be missing that you realize that you could be missing so much other stuff, big and small, that's passing you by. And I feel like that's the great thing about this time in our lives. You get to look around, read a little, you might have a couple of minutes, and make sure that you pursue all those interests that have been on your bucket list, big or small, for so long. And that's why I like Mike Nichols' quote, which is, the only safe thing is to take a chance. Let's pause here for a second. What Emily and I have realized is essential, at least for both of us, is to think about new experiences all the time and what lies ahead. Your day-to-day life changes, as Emmy said, for you, for us at this age, but you want to make sure that the days are meaningful. As meaningful now as they ever were, maybe more so. It's not, you don't want to waste time, and you really want to try to live with purpose and intent when you don't have, a 9-to-5 job anymore, or 9 to 9, or whatever it is. It's along with trying to have a lot of fun. So what we both try to do is think about what's next. So we're trying to tell you what's next. Emily, tell them about the chocolate.
Well, as a pastry chef for 25 years, I obviously made a lot of desserts with chocolate. And chocolate for me was saying you go into the pantry, you go into the metro shelving of the dry storage room, and you pull out a bag of chocolate. When it got low, you just call up the supplier and say, I need 50 more pounds of chocolate, and it just like appeared. And then about 5 years ago, I looked at that bag of chocolate and I started reading about it, and I was like, but what about, how does that chocolate get to me? How is that chocolate made? Not what do you make out of the chocolate, how is that chocolate made? And so I started investigating it, and I actually took a class in how to make chocolate, how to roast the beans, how to winnow the beans, which you're separating the nib from the skin, how to grind them, how much sugar to add, how to get the most flavor out. And the more I learned about it, the more obsessed I got. And so when I started making it home the first time, I said, okay, I've written 6 cookbooks, I'm gonna sit down, this is gonna be my recipe for chocolate. And it's gonna be the same as if I write a recipe for a chocolate chip cookie or a chocolate cake or anything like that. And then halfway into the first recipe, the chocolate making thing, I realized there are too many variables here that I have no control over. I'm not gonna be able to make the same chocolate every single time. And at first I was in a panic about that because it was like, I have to control it. I have to be able to recreate the same thing over and over. And then I think, and with this, I think the reason I was able to make this shift was, it is because I am a little bit older, but then I said to myself, that's okay if you don't have all that control. All you have to do to make sure that you do every time is make good chocolate. It doesn't have to be the same chocolate chip cookie every single time, it just has to be a good one. And in something like wine, chocolate, you discover, is so much like wine. It depends on how the cacao is grown, depends on how it's fermented, it depends on how it's dried, it depends on the weather. So once I let go of the fact that I could just enjoy the process of making chocolate, that I didn't have to control every minute, and I was only going to enjoy it if it came out exactly the same. It was so eye-opening that I no longer really, I care about the finished product, but I care just as much about the process.
So I'm doing something that's not quite as trying or tasty. I, like my friend Barbara over here, has done the same thing. I don't know if any of you have ever if you've been up to Provincetown, as you go into town, there are these giant sand dunes on the right. They're about, 20 stories high, it looks like. Behind them are these dune shacks, and they're made out of flotsam. And they're now controlled by the National Park Service. So I decided, I have a room of my own to write in, but to get away, to go somewhere, to be on a retreat, gives you a special feeling. It's uplifting, it makes you feel special, it makes you work harder. And so I entered myself in the lottery to go. And I thought I'd have a better chance if I went in April or November like a New Englander. And so I'm going on Sunday. I parked the car on Route 6 and a ranger comes and gets me with the Jeep. And he drives me up and over the sand dunes for a mile into the interior, I guess near the ocean, and delivers me to the shack on Sunday afternoon, and he says, I'll see you next Sunday. And there's no heat and no electricity and no running water. And I have a solar charger so that I can not write longhand like Nathaniel Hawthorne. But it's completely outside of my comfort zone. I believe God invented hotels so you didn't have to camp. So, it's exciting for me because I'm a little nervous, and it's new, and it's exciting, and it's going to be something altogether different. So, that's my new thing experience.
And And I think part of the challenge and excitement about life at all ages is to keep current, keep mentally engaged, keep trying new things. And it's not just a function of staying current on the news or understanding what the next generation is doing. It's all about just moving yourself forward. And that's one of the things that we like about the Muhammad Ali quote. He says, "A man who views the world the same at 50 as he did at 20 has wasted 30 years of his life." And you know, when you look at Muhammad Ali, he was called the greatest of all time. He did that at a very, very young age, relatively. And so he could have rested on his laurels, but he didn't. He was an activist, a humanitarian, and a philanthropist. And the majority of the time that he did that, he also had Parkinson's disease. So, you know, here is a man that is just the epitome of moving forward.
You know, and when you think of somebody like Ali, I think of one of my favorite quotes in the book, which is from a man you might not have ever heard of. His name is Robert Rowe, and he says, "The older you get, the fewer things it seems too late to do." He's an operatic tenor in his 50s, so kudos to him, because that's an industry where middle age could come upon you pretty fast. But I keep returning to his statement for myself because it appeals to me in the same way of those people you hear who get superhuman strength at a time when they need it in the face of adversity. I keep thinking to myself, now I'm 60, or now I'm 65, and it's really time I got to that thing that I wanted to do. And so, you know, I get to say to myself, it's not too late. It's not too late. And for the majority of the time, I've given up the marathon idea, but the majority of the time I realize that's true. It's that I'm right.
The Madeleine L'Engle quote that we like, the author who wrote A Wrinkle in Time, her quote is, "The great thing about getting older is you don't lose all the other ages you've been." And what I love about this quote is it kind of speaks to your life as a conglomeration of all the other ages. It's not like, you know, when people that aren't any age, they look at another age and they think of you as that age, and they don't think of you as someone on a continuum or as a whole person. And I think that those experiences that you've had, childhood, young adulthood, working, you know, for me it was working in New York City right after college, you know, and then it's your first successes in your careers, marriage if you have it, kids if you have it. All those things add up to kind of who you are as a person, and it's all like one big, you know, recipe that's being developed all the time. And as you add new things to the pot, they just make the soup taste better.
I also love the Keith Richards quote. I don't think we really thought that we'd be looking for sage advice from Keith Richards, and you could hardly believe he was still alive. Never mind saying something really smart, but he said something that's sort of the dirty little secret of aging, which is getting older is a fascinating thing. The older you get, the older you want to get. Now, lots of us, you know, think of the Stones as the music of our youth. So your mind plays this weird trick on you where you think, well, the Stones are still out there performing. They're still young, right? Like me, or at least they still want to be young, maybe. But I'll bet you Keith Richards feels the same way that many of us do, that growing older turns out to be far richer, far easier, far more cool than we ever believed it could be. And that you don't even have to be a rock star to enjoy it.
We did find another rock star quote, and that was what was fun too, is they weren't just like people like Shakespeare that were making quotes about aging. It was, you know, Mick Jagger. In this case, it was Patti Smith. You know, here are people that are icons about living young, living hard, living wild.
This is my favorite, I think.
Hers is, "I want to be around a really long time. I want to be a thorn in the side of everything as long as possible."
I find that possibility so appealing, don't you all?
And then the anthropologist Ashley Montague's quote, "I want to die young at a ripe old age."
I think that says it all, don't you?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Any questions, anybody?
How many quotes did you not use for the book?
We hundreds, hundreds, and we had a quote a couple of quotes that we really loved, and we were very careful about sourcing them and making sure that they were real. And you know, like you find a lot of Abraham Lincoln quotes and that are not at all from Abraham Lincoln. And we found one that we really, really loved, and we couldn't make sure that it was really true. And we remember we were arduous about trying to find it. But what's funny about it is we remember this story in completely different ways. I mean.
Yeah, so we were very diligent, especially if the person was alive. We really wanted to make sure we found the exact source that the quote was taken from. And so it was an article, it was an interview, or something like that. So there was one quote that Condoleezza Rice said. And she said that she never wanted to be the former anything. And I just love that quote, because there's so many people you see that they go on for their next 40 years and they're still known as what they used to do. And I'm like, something's missing here. So anyway, we tried to source it and source it and source it, and we couldn't find it anywhere. So then I realized I had a very good friend who was involved with a speakers bureau, and I said, I wonder if she can reach out to Dr. Rice. Dr. Rice is now a Stanford professor. So I called her up and I said, do you think that you can find me some contact information? So she called me back 2 days later and she said, I have her assistant's name. Dr. Rice's assistant's name. And so I wrote to the assistant and I told her what we were doing, and I said, we really would like to verify, this quote. So about 4 days later I heard back from her and she said, well, I've researched far and wide and I can't find that Dr. Rice said this anywhere. And so it was kind of written in the third person that I thought was strange, so I emailed her back and said, can you maybe just ask her? And so then I got another email back, Dr. Rice does not even remember saying this ever. And I wanted to email her back again and ask, can she maybe just say it? But I thought, I'm bothered this woman enough, so let's move on.
Here's how I remember the story. We're so pissed off.
So after that, I let Erin know.
Right. So we were so pissed off we couldn't find it because it's such a great quote. And so Emmy says, I'm writing to her together doing something in the same room, which is unusual. She said, I'm writing to her. I said, yeah, you're writing to her. Here's how the letter goes. Dear Madam Secretary, do you like cake? And then I forgot about it, and months went by. So one night it's about, I know that Emily is not in the U.S., and so it's 11 o'clock at night for her, and I get an email from her. So I was sort of worried. I thought that was unusual. Our work for the day or the week was long finished, but I was in a meeting with somebody, and I saw this email, so I sort of tap it, and I'm trying to pay attention, and the person I'm in the meeting with, she says, what's wrong? I guess my face turned white. Here's what the email says. Dear Erin, I heard from the doctor today and the news is not good. I'm afraid the result is not what we had hoped. What? She's got stage 4. She's in the final days. And I didn't know that she was calling herself Dr. Rice. Doesn't she call herself Madam Secretary? So of course all the whole giant news was that Dr. Rice didn't say it, but it was pretty funny.
That was my quote now.
Right.
Excellent.
Yes, hi.
Hi. Do you think that ageism affects men the same way it does women?
Personally, I do.
You do?
I do. I think in probably many ways. I find that men are not as resilient as women. If they retire, they don't know what to do with themselves. If they lose their job, they're totally lost. If they they often don't know what to do with their time. I know I'm making wide generalizations and I don't need to insult anyone. But but what I know, I'm a girl. So.
I think they do and they don't. I think that you can talk generally about people's reactions to things and turning certain ages, but I also think two women can have different attitudes to it too. And I think that's the beauty also about some of the quotes in the book is some will relate to you, some will relate to me, some will relate to my brother, and just different people will react to them in different ways. So I think there's a general feeling that, gosh, I'm getting older, I only have so much time left, that kind of thing. But people's personal way they react to that, I think, is very individual. And I think, obviously, there's male, the way males react to things in general and female that you can somewhat generalize, but I think so some of that is yes, but then it turns into an individual thing.
Do you think so?
I think that society treats men very differently across the board, and in particular when they get older. Yes, I think that women can be invisible as they get older, and men are not.
Oh,
I think that there's obviously...
that's another book. But we're with you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Can you repeat exactly what you were going to do when your next vacation?
Well, I'm not calling it a vacation. First, I'm going to a dune shack in Provincetown, and where I'll be left alone for a week without heat or electricity to try to write my next book.
It's a dune shack, not a dude shack.
It would never be a dune shack.
And do you have to truck in the food?
Yes, I do, Sally Richardson.
Wow.
Yes, and they say, multiple times they've said, and if you don't like field mice, stay home. And so they're like, put everything in your cooler, get it? Because, you don't want the mice to eat it overnight.
Do you have some running water?
There's a pump, or you can bring water, or both. Abby said to me, well, you can't have pasta every night. I said, why not? It's my total plan. She said, too much water.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, so much.